So, folks, Ben Shapiro hasn't been doing so hot lately. So, it seems like he's decided to return to his roots of trying to debate, college students. Except he's a little bit older now, so maybe he's like, well, I'm not going to debate a college student. I'll debate someone from Gen Z. Let's just go. We'll talk to someone from Gen Z, and I'll own them on the economy. And I can't help but notice that this video that has been up on his channel for the last 6 days has 46,000 views, and his main YouTube channel has 7 million subscribers. That ain't good. So let's see. I'm just curious. Because I feel like it would be doing better on his channel if he owned Gen Z on economics. Is the well running dry? Let's find out.
You may notice something about this video already. I'm off center, which means someone is about to roll into frame. That someone is Madison.
Correct.
Wow, that wasn't awkward at all. She's 24 and apparently has questions about affordability and economics. So get ready for some true excitement.
Okay, I already have so many questions. Because number one, this makes Ben Shapiro, for those who don't know, back in the day used to be called the cool kids philosopher, right? This does not make him look like a cool kids philosopher, number one. Number two, who is Madison? You gonna introduce her? Like, who is she? Is she like, you're introducing her like she's just some lady, but like who is she? Is she an intern at the Daily Wire? Is she a friend of a friend? Did you just find her on a college campus? What exactly is going on here? What is she doing here? Because clearly this isn't someone who just came in off the street being like, Ben Shapiro, I'd like to talk to you about the economy, Mr. Man. Like that, I don't think that's what happened here. So like, who is she? And then before you say, check the show description, I did look at the show description. She is not further described in the description. So let's see what this is about. Why is everything so expensive? Which I guess is the current marching order for the Daily Wire. Not to spoil a future segment here, but literally,
that's a screen grab.
Literally 4 days ago, Matt Walsh put out a video. Why does everything we buy suck now? And we're going to cover that at some point in the near future. But in the meantime, affordability seems to be the name of the game here. They really think this is going to be the new thing. And it doesn't seem to be the new thing, at least not yet. Why is everything so expensive? Couldn't possibly be because of Donald Trump and his tariffs. Or the greed of corporations. No. Has to be the people who are wrong. It's wokeness.
Here we go.
Okay, let's talk about affordability. Mm-hmm. So specifically, why has affordability gotten as bad as it has? And also, what are some ways that we can get grocery prices specifically down? Because that's where I approach the most struggle in my daily life as a young 24-year-old. You know, you go there and eggs are like $6 versus the $2 I paid when I was in college.
Yeah, so the best way to sort of understand in very, very basic economic terms how the price of a good is this.
Oh boy, we're back to we're falling back to like Glenn Beck's old shtick of explaining things with whiteboards. Let's go.
Decided. A typical supply-demand curve looks something like this. Okay, so here on the y-axis you have the price of a good.
Okay.
Here on the x-axis you have the quantity of a good. Okay, so right, as the supply of a good increases and the demand comes down, then the price decreases. Okay, so here's where your price would be when they meet.
Except that does not, in fact, represent the curve for all things. There are other goods that do not operate on this curve. But okay.
Okay, is when the supply, this is called equilibrium, is where the supply and demand curves meet. So some of the egg price crisis.
Yeah, exactly. You have elastic goods and products, and you have inelastic goods and products. You got
That had to do with actual like disease among chickens and mass slaughter
Oh.
of chickens. There was some of that happened a couple of years ago, and the egg prices have sort of reduced from where they were a year or two ago. But everything remains incredibly elevated again because of the injection of all of this money into the economy under the Biden administration. There are these huge.
Yeah, definitely. No one else injected money into the economy during, say, a global crisis that led to a lot of people losing their jobs just like a handful of years ago. No, yeah. All of those stimulus checks during COVID, they got them not from
Elastic
printing.
votes? Quick, plug your business.
Check out ImogeneOlivia.com. ImogeneOlivia.com, gender euphoric lingerie. Buy it because it's the holidays and you might know a trans person who needs it, and also to spite Ben Shapiro. All right, let's go.
Huge bills that went forth that
Link should be down in the description, by the way.
kind of spread huge amounts of money. Plus, the Federal Reserve was really, really loose in its lending policy. That's why the interest rates were too low.
Got it.
So they were injecting enormous amounts of money. And, again, all of the COVID stimulus that went in 2020, just free health.
Yeah. All of the COVID stimulus that went in 2020, when Donald Trump was president.
Helicopter money to everybody, raises the price. So the question is, what are we comparing grocery prices to? So if we're comparing grocery prices to where they were 6 years ago, they're extraordinary. If we're comparing them to where they were 1 year ago, then they're slightly higher than they were a year ago, but everybody was freaking out a year ago, and they should have been freaking out a year ago.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things President Trump is competing with is where the baseline lies. Does the baseline lie from when he took office, or is the baseline where kind of all of our heads are at? 5 years ago, I could, go to the grocery store and spend half of what I'm currently spending. As far as what could be done to bring down grocery prices right now, I mean, he should get rid of the tariff.
Is this a debate, or is he just going to mansplain? I think he's going to try and mansplain this. Oh, look, Ben Shapiro. I mean, I think he should get rid of the tariffs. Oh, you think, Ben? You think you, a fan of small government, supposedly, you think he should get rid of the tariffs that he himself imposed unilaterally on all of us? And has irrevocably destroyed business and our international relations as a result? Crazy. What a wild conclusion to come to, Ben.
The tariffs are going to temporarily increase grocery prices because they're reducing the supply of the products that you want to buy. He himself is acknowledging this. He recognizes that, for example, bananas and coffee, too expensive. So what did he just do? He relieved tariffs on bananas and coffee.
Yeah, the tariffs he put in place. Because he's a moron. If you thought about it for 5 seconds, you'd know not to put those tariffs on in the first place. Yeah, uncertainty drives prices up because if people don't know what the Mad King is gonna do, they charge more. Because it's harder to get the things that they want, and they don't know what their prices are gonna be next time.
Right, which is a tacit acknowledgement that when you get rid of tariffs, then the prices tend to go down. Now, there is a study that came out recently that suggested...
Also, wait, I'm sorry. Wait a minute.
On bananas and coffee, right? Which is a tacit acknowledgement that when you get rid of tariffs, then the prices tend to go down. Now, there is a study that came out recently.
That wouldn't affect the price of eggs, though, Ben. Also, Ben, corporations price gouge, Ben. Ben. Just Ben. Ben, maybe this has something to do with it, Ben. Hey, Ben. Ben, the egg industry literally has a history of colluding to do this, Ben. Hey, Ben. Hey, Ben. Ben Shapiro. Cool kids philosopher, Ben Shapiro. Hey. What about this? U.S. investigates egg producers over soaring prices. Justice Department is said to be focused on potential antitrust violations because they keep colluding about goddamn egg prices. Hey, Ben. Hey, Ben. Hey, Ben. It's corporate greed. It's corporate greed, Ben. I don't know. Hey, look at this. Cal-Maine rakes in massive profits thanks to bird flu. Cal-Maine produces more than 1 in 5 of the eggs we eat in the United States and is the country's leading egg producer. It owns 43 egg production facilities, with which stuff an average of 1 million hens into each operation. It's also one of the few publicly traded egg corporations, which means some of its financial data is public. We looked at the company's reports to the Securities Exchange Commission and USDA data on egg production and bird flu. Despite narratives blaming bird flu shortages for price hikes, Cal-Maine factory farms remained free of bird flu until December of 2023. In fact, during the company's fiscal year of 2023, June 2022 through May 2023, it sold 7% more eggs compared to 2021. That same year, its profits soared more than 7 times. So, to be clear, from 2022 to 2023, it sold 7% more eggs, but its profits went up by 700% because they're price gouging. At what point do we realize that in a post-truth world, nothing objective matters to these people? Yeah, but what I'm banking on it, what I'm hoping on is that you guys care, despite the world being post-truth to these losers, that you guys care about what's true. And I'm doing this show for you guys, not for Ben Shapiro. Because Ben Shapiro is paid not to care or understand these issues.
That suggested that tariff policy leads to deflation, that it leads to lower prices over time. People are reading that study wrong. What that study says is that tariffs actually lead to job loss. Job loss leads to people not being able to buy things. When people can't buy things, demand goes down, and so the actual price goes down. So
another way of saying that is that Donald Trump is killing American businesses. Yes.
long-term prices go down because you wreck the economy with big tariff regimes, which is not exactly what you actually want to go for.
That's so scary.
Yeah, so I think that
Godcat, I am bisexual. Thank you.
we have an excellent supply chain domestically in the United States
Right.
for food. The biggest problem is just a generalized problem that we feel mostly at the grocery store because it's the most immediate place we spend a lot of money. Again, it's kind of like the clearest place that you see.
Yeah. We have a good supply chain in the United States that doesn't rely on all those foreign corporations, except, for everything that makes our current food logistical line possible. All of the parts and such, and all of the things that allow us to make the parts and such come from elsewhere.
Is in the food prices, but everything has gone up tremendously over the course of the Biden
Right.
administration and is kind of coming down, but hasn't gone down.
Man, it'd be really cool if we knew where Madison was coming from, who she is as a person, what org does she represent, who is she? Is she gonna just uncritically swallow all of this? Because it kind of seems like she might. I don't know. I'm looking for some critical engagement with what Ben is saying here.
Down all the way under Trump. When I say gone down, it actually, I should correct. The prices went up like this under Joe Biden, and now the prices are going up like this under Trump. Everybody wants the prices to actually come down. If you want the
Right.
prices to actually come down, you need a deflation rate, not an inflation rate. Right? The inflation rate right now is 3%. So that means that everything is now 3% higher than it was 1 year ago. Well, if last year it increased by 11%, and you're adding another 3 on top of that, then that's still really high. When people say they want prices to come down,
She's from the Brett Cooper cloning vat. I mean, but my question is she, does she work for the Daily Wire? Because if she does, I'm inclined to agree with you. But genuinely, they haven't established her bona fides for us to be able to say that she does.
and this is what politicians refuse to understand, they don't mean that they want the trajectory to look like that. They mean they want the trajectory to look like this.
Yes.
Okay, and if you want the trajectory to look like this, you need to pursue actual deflationary policies. And deflationary policies, that's a scary thing because deflation very typically exists only with radical increase in supply, which, again, we have pretty good supply chains, so it really isn't a supply.
Well, you could always tax the rich and circulate more of their money in the economy. Just as an idea, if you wanted to free up more money, you could free up the wealthiest people in society's money, so that the society that made them wealthy in the first place can sustain itself and not have people dying in the streets. But, Ben would never advocate for that.
Supply problem, per se,
Yeah.
or radical decrease in demand. And if you want to radically decrease demand,
You have to crash the economy.
yes, that's typically the way that deflation tends to occur. So basically get you...
I'm sorry. Ben Shapiro, for the last decade, has basically argued that Republicans are good on the economy, that Donald Trump is good on the economy. And we are less than a year into Donald Trump being president for the second time. And he's like, yes, deflationary policies, if pursued, would crash the economy. So, yeah, get used to it, I guess. And like, that's, I don't know, is that not like a stunning indictment of like everything you profess to believe in over the last decade? Is that not worth some level of introspection?
To these prices is all I'm saying. Unless you have a Des Moines and you can go talk to Jerome Powell about radically reducing interest rates in a time of gigantic government subsidies pushed by both the late Trump administration and the entirety of the Biden administration. I don't have a time machine. There's never been a period in America.
Also, Ben's rewriting history here, just as an FYI, because keep in mind, the United States government under Donald Trump 1 voted to give literally trillions of dollars to the wealthiest people to ever exist. And Donald Trump under the second administration, the entire GOP voted unanimously to provide like even more trillions of dollars to the wealthiest people to ever exist. So, if you want to look at anyone who's crashing the economy at the moment, it would be the guys who are looting our country and giving the money to the wealthiest people, again, to ever exist, to the tune of trillions of dollars. Good night, Dragonfly. Join your local Dems indeed. Radicalize them.
American history that was significantly deflationary over time that did not coincide with a significant economic downturn.
So essentially, the state of what we're living in right now, economically.
This is the new normal. It's the new normal.
This is the new normal.
It's baked into the cake, yep.
Because of how high it was during the...
Sorry. A little audio snafu there. Let me backtrack just slightly.
This is the new normal.
It's baked into the cake, yep.
Because of how high the inflation was during the Biden administration.
Right.
He was like handing checks, doing lots of subsidies, doing all these things. And now we're suffering the consequences of that.
And I think politically, it's one of the reasons why politicians need to be careful how they talk. So Trump came into office and he said, I'm going to bring the prices back down. What he should have said is, Joe Biden embedded these prices in the economy. You can't undo everything Joe Biden did. It's not possible unless I just...
Well, Joe Biden didn't embed these prices in the economy. I guess that's why he didn't bring up, for example, collusion to artificially inflate prices, to essentially price gouge the American public with the egg companies. I guess that's why he didn't bring it up earlier. It's because he wants to frame Joe Biden as like the great Satan of our time who dastardly made the eggs more expensive. That it's a pretty bad argument. Not gonna lie.
Suck all the money that he gave you, go back in time, suck all the money out of everybody's pocket. You could increase supply, but it's hard to see how you increase the egg supply. How do you triple in order to get back to the old prices, you have to like increase the egg supply by a factor of 2 or 3. Right? You have to increase the turkey supply by a factor.
No, you don't have to increase the egg supply by a factor of 2 or 3 to reduce prices. You could simply, pass legislation that would limit the amount egg producers can price gouge for their eggs. That is also an option. Like when you find out that there's an illegal monopoly fixing egg prices, seems kind of like you should do something about that.
How are you going to do that? Very difficult to see how.
During Trump's last campaign when he won in 2024, everybody kept saying that the reason the economy is so bad is because we're living in the economy that Trump created. That was the agenda that the left was pushing, was the reason things are so bad is because of what Trump previously did. But the reality that we're looking at here is that all the government subsidies and Biden, printing money and just handing money to people, I mean, it's monopoly money at that point because...
Literally... Have we all forgot Trump checks? I'm sorry, Donald Trump is literally right now trying to push an idea of giving $2,000 checks to Americans, but Biden is the one who's printing money and throwing it around? What are you talking about? If we're talking about they were throwing money around because of the child tax credit existed, that was the single most successful anti-poverty intervention of the modern era. Like, it lifted over half of children living in poverty out of poverty. It was crazy successful. That's not just printing money and throwing it into the ether, because that money then circulates in local economies, right? Like, the guys who are giving all of this money that then goes into coffers and doesn't circulate, that's the GOP. That's Ben Shapiro's guys. Play this clip real quick. I trust you. What is this?
Let me tell you something, because this is important. Farmers need to stop playing in people's faces with this "I'm poor" stuff right now, because people are sick of it. Poor people don't start small farms. You're going to start a small specialty crop thing. You need money and or access for land, for expertise, for equipment, supplies, irrigation equipment, crop row covers. You need high tones, you need greenhouses, you need hoop houses, you need places to store the stuff, ways to pack it. Like, all that stuff costs money. See, I've never been poor a day in my life, but I grew up in Southeast DC in the 80s and 90s. So, while I didn't live in the projects, I was surrounded by the projects. And I've seen what actual poverty looks like. And none of these people, at any point, ever had the resources or the access to be able to start a small farm of any kind. Them people didn't have the money to start a container garden on the porch. Now, as a result of dumping your money and your access and your privilege or whatever into starting your small farm, you might now be broke, but broke and poor aren't the same thing. Shit, bro, I'm broke. I got $40 that's got to last me until the end of the month. But I've also got this house that I'm going to inherit on 2 acres. I'm on 3 trust funds. The interest in my business is worth $500,000. My support network is drowning in money. My parents have money. My in-laws have money. My cousins, my brothers have money. My best friends are a radiologist, an attorney, a dentist, a CPA, a guy that has a $30 million contract with HUD, and a guy that lives in Dubai, and I still don't know what this nigga does for a living. So what I'm saying is, I'm broke right now because my business has me dumping almost all of my money into it, for potential future gain. But hell will freeze and thaw and freeze again before I or anybody near me lets me or my family suffer the way poor people are made to suffer. And farmers need to stop playing, acting like they're one bad harvest away from homelessness, because they're not. I swear to God, you go interview 10,000 homeless people, I guarantee you not one of them is going to be, man, I used to be a farmer. They're one bad harvest away from having to liquidate some of their assets that they'd rather not in order to make themselves whole. You remember that farmer, Skyler? That dude that was all over the internet a few months ago talking about, I might lose this farm.
I might lose my farm because of the government. NRCS, conservation planning, cost sharing on stuff like fencing, different seedings, water lines, better conserve farmland for agricultural use. They called me today and said, hey, I know we have the signed contract. We're reneging on it. We're not going to pay out on it. I'm just screwed. And unless they lift this pause on payment, I'm going to lose this farm.
Here's this shameless bitch several months later.
I'm thinking about selling all my cows, and I need you guys to tell me why it doesn't make sense to do this. I pay $1.2 million for my farm, where I only owe $920,000 on it. So half of that loan is through the FSA at 3% interest for 30 years. The other half of that loan is through a bank at 7+% interest. After 2 years of paying on it, I still owe $457,000 on that $460,000 loan through the bank because the interest is eating up most of my payment. I'm in a situation where if I was to sell all my cows that are worth about $300,000 and I own those free and clear, and I sell my rental houses for, they're worth about $200,000 and I own those free and clear, I would have enough money to, after I pay taxes, to pay off the bank side of my loan.
Oh! This dude was never in danger of having to sell his farm. He was in danger of being forced to sell part of his cattle herd or one of his rental properties, which he's now considering doing anyway to take advantage of high cattle prices to clear out one of his loans, because the other loan with the FSA he's able to pay for with his off-farm job. Same guy that was telling you back in February that he was one Doge signature away from possibly being homeless. This is why cattlemen are mad, by the way, that Trump might undo the windfall that he's engineered for them with these tariffs and refusal to do anything about climate change. This is why they're mad, right? They cattle prices record high. These guys are able to retire.
This guy is 100% correct, which is why I haven't said anything.
Hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in personal debt, while continuing to suck at the teat of the USDA, getting your money for their low interest FSA loans, getting your money free money as grants, not loans, to build their fences and their wells and their improvements so they can get even wealthier. All while constantly telling you, I'm just a small farmer, I'm barely breaking even. Keep playing with people, playing games, because people are looking at y'all now the way they've never looked at farmers before. When they find out that you've been lying to them for decades, they're gonna fuck you up.
Now, I will say that while everything that guy said is true, something else to keep in mind is that there is also a secondary process whereby major agriculture companies are coming through and consolidating farms into their businesses. And it's absolutely true that, like, these farmers have an option to sell their land and sell their farm in order to clear debts that they might accrue. But also, that's part of a bad process. Like, some farmers, they got the family farms, like, that has worth, that has value. It's why so many farmers have closed up shop. Those farmers don't, like, that their farms don't just, like, disappear and, like, their fields lie fallow. No, they sell it out to a major corporation, and, like, that is leading to this process of, monopoly over farmland. And it's not good in a multitude of different directions. You either got, essentially folks who are extraordinarily wealthy in assets, but not that wealthy in cash, right? Which is a lot of farmers. But then you have the big ag, the gigantic agriculture companies coming through and monopolizing all of that, which then leads to essentially a more advanced form of sharecropping. It's not great. As far as I'm concerned, like, these massive agriculture companies need to be broken up. They could be asset poor and cash poor, like most of us. Yeah, of course. Like, it could be worse for them. Yes. And this is major asterisk next to it there, right? Which is that I think the solution here is farms that are owned and run as democratic co-ops, where the workers at the farm collectively own the farm as an operation. And that is a bit of a departure from how we imagine farms to typically operate. And one of the ways we need to figure out how to go forward is that, like, we need a better way to do what we've done. We need to bust up the monopolies, but it won't be enough to just bust up the monopolies, because those monopolies are just going to reform. Give them another 60 years. They'll come back. There needs to be a better solution. And I do think that solution is, hey, the folks who work on that farm, they need to have a say in how that farm is run, what is done with the profit of their labor, etc. Because otherwise you just get right back to the problem. You break up these monopolies. You get right back to the problem of, well, you have essentially asset rich but cash poor people who then sit on top of these these farming operations. And, like, the fundamental nature and relationship between the operation and the worker needs to change. That's just my position on almost all things in our economy, by the way. But I just gotta say, like, it's a shitty prospect either way. Either we have these kind of petit bourgeois sitting on their land, or you have, a massive agriculture conglomerate worth trillions of dollars sitting on that land. Those are kind of the two options right now, and both are terrible. I was looking for farm work in Indiana a few months ago. All the jobs are in trucking. Farmers need low-paid CDLA semi-drivers. Makes sense to me. You can grow food for a family of 4 on a quarter acre. We need to go back to that. I don't know that. I don't know how many people have the time or the resources to do that. I think that there is some benefit to just having, like, gigantic farms. Like, I think that that's good. I think that we can grow an awful lot of food for people and allow, folks to specialize in doing what they will. Because clearly there are people who enjoy farming. We're getting so far afield here. Yeah, the name of that channel we played is Farming While Beige.
When you print that much money, it loses its worth, is what we saw the last year of his presidency, is when we started to see the repercussions of that. And then when Trump came in.
And there's always truth to the idea that we're living in the consequences of history. So it is true.
There's always truth in... Yes, we do live with the consequences of things that happened before. Yes, that is how cause and effect works.
Yeah.
That Joe Biden came into office on the back of a already inflationary economy that was about to burst because the last year of COVID was that bad. 2020 was really...
Yeah, so Joe Biden came into office with a massive inflation already baked in. By the end of his term, it was getting under control.
Yeah.
Now, it could have gone back down if he hadn't continued to inflate it. He used that as an excuse to continue to just shovel money out the door, helicopter money all through 2021.
Right.
Radically keep those interest.
Yeah, because you needed to recover the economy after COVID. Like, just because, like, the main wave of COVID stopped, or diminished, rather, never truly went away. But just because it diminished and we had, like, vaccines and, like, effective treatments... that didn't mean the economy was recovered yet, Ben. That's what the additional support was for.
Rates low, all of that sort of stuff contributed to a heightening of the bubble. There was this bizarre idea, if you recall, all the way back to like 2018, 2019. Elizabeth Warren was promoting it. She called it modern.
Is he supposed to be debating her? It's supposed to be... It's labeled Gen Z confronts me on the economy, but this doesn't feel like a confrontation, so I'm not entirely sure what this is, other than they got the office intern and are trying to see if she would be good on camera.
Monetary theory, and her idea was that inflation would never happen again. That basically you could print as much money as you wanted, and that because other countries were going to buy up our debt, then it wouldn't matter. Obama also had a pretty loose monetary policy, and there wasn't tremendous inflation. And the reason there wasn't tremendous inflation is because demand remained low because the economy was stagnating.
Right.
Under Trump, what happened is that because it was an artificial crater, it wasn't like a natural crater to the economy, right? We just all went home and we stayed home for like months.
Right.
And then we all came back to work. But the problem is in the interim, demand did not go down. Demand maintained, right?
Yes.
And then demand continued to go up because we just shoveled money at people. And so the prices continued to rise. So.
The demand didn't continue to go up. Corporations sought to take advantage of people during the pandemic and artificially inflated their prices to take advantage of people. Like, they're not following a cost-benefit curve there. They're saying, we have a captive audience. Let us take advantage of them while we may. Like, come on.
Okay, so that makes sense. Then when everybody jumped back into working and suddenly
suddenly we all had money up to wazoo, right?
Yeah.
Like money was fun, and then everyone's, but wait, this money isn't making me more wealthy, which goes back to the original point, which is money is a ruler. Money is not an actual determinant of wealth. What you can buy for the money is the thing that matters, right?
Yeah. So when things become...
This is hurting me and making me mad.
Oh, Ben. Are you about to confront me on the economy couch with your big, throbbing facts?
Oh, no. No, he would never do that, Sake Tanuki. She clearly moisturizes. That's too much moisture.
More and more expensive. Obviously, money becomes less valuable.
Correct.
And so
wheelbarrow money is not making you richer.
Yeah, exactly. That's so crazy. It's also...
I'm sorry, Ben. Are you saying you don't think that if someone presented you with a wheelbarrow of money, you wouldn't be a richer man? I'm sorry, but Ben is like, yeah, no, what matters is what you can buy with that money. Yeah, and what you can buy with that money, like, is a certain percentage points more expensive or less expensive, depending on inflation/deflation. But, like, if you have a wheelbarrow full of money, you can still buy a lot of things. I'm speechless right now. Like, yeah, of course, like, what matters is the value attached to that money and how that money can be used to buy goods and services, right? When we're talking about money. But in our current context, if someone presented you with a wheelbarrow full of money, you would still be a wheelbarrow full of money richer. Yeah, you could buy some sexy underwear from ImogeneOlivia.com. Gender euphoric lingerie, designed from the ground up for trans femmes, but also tested on cis men and cis women and non-binary folks. Rave reviews all around. Check it out. Description down in the doobly-doo. Please stop prompting me to advertise.
Shifting my mindset, because I've always thought of money in terms of like, oh, if I have this much, I'm in a good place. Or if we have this house, or if we have these things. But that isn't necessarily true.
Right. It's more about what you can buy for the money.
Yes.
And so that's where monetary policy comes in, and fiscal policy, and economic policy, and all the rest of it.
So
really, when you think about it, someone could have no money and be very rich in spirit, right? Because you can't buy love. So technically, it's priceless. So if you have love, you have more than any amount of wealth that anyone could ever have.
here's a question that I've kind of always had. This is more of a life question, and you obviously have a lot of life experience.
I am old.
Because you're old!
You're not old. You're not old.
I have 4 kids. It's okay.
Oh my gosh, you have 4 kids?
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
So I can
I don't have any
safely
kids,
say that
so-
I'm middle-aged at this point.
So, in terms of like what
Awkward.
you would do in your life to get to a good place now, obviously speaking, you know, me and my husband work very hard, and we have to work very hard to kind of be where
the bills and-
make
yeah.
the bills and do all the things. And what would your advice be on how to get out of this stage of like the panic of like, okay, I've got to work hard every single day. I've got to find a way to make it. And there's, you know, barely enough money for the month. Like, what would you suggest is the best life advice to really get
So
where you
I'm
want to
not
go?
sure there's actually like a one piece of general life advice. I'd actually sit with you and your husband and go through your bills. Honestly, like this
Yeah.
is the best way to do it, is to actually sit down, see how much you're earning, how much you're paying in tax.
Step 1, have a really successful YouTube channel. Step 2, find a billionaire donor who is willing to pay you to go on camera. Step 3, invest in gold. Ad transition.
What your bills are, where you can cut, where you can save. Like
Right.
it's an individualized thing, but fiscal responsibility and financial responsibility at home, there's no one size fits all, other than you actually just have to sit there with
Right.
a pocket calculator, not your phone, and yeah, I'm showing my age, and like an actual, you know, Excel spreadsheet, and see where you can minimize your expenditures. I mean, again,
Have you considered not spending so much money on that avocado toast?
I've been your age when you're 24. I got married when I was 24. My wife was 20 at the time.
Yeah.
And we had to absorb her education costs. We had to absorb
Yeah.
her medical school costs. We had to still pay off some of my Harvard student loans. Like there was all this
Whoa.
stuff. You know, there was a point maybe a year into our marriage where we were down to like the point of, do we need to take out a second credit card to shift debt from one credit card to another for lower interest rate? Like it's kind of
Wow.
normal at your age.
Yeah.
And then the question is, how do you achieve an income trajectory? What is your career path that is going to take you from making 70 grand a year or 60 grand a year to making 200 grand a year? And that can take some time. Every wealthy person I know was once not a wealthy person.
Yeah.
And those people.
That's just not true. Like, I'm sorry, you know a bunch of trust fund kids. Like, undeniably, Ben Shapiro runs in trust fund kid circles. He knows people who were born into opulence unimaginable to the rest of us.
People had to work and toil in some semi-obscurity until they sort of hit a trajectory, right? So my wife and I had a very good life for sure when we were first married, because
Yeah.
a good life doesn't require a big house and it doesn't require a huge income. You can have a great life just living in a small house or a condo
Yeah.
like we did when we were first married, and it can be wonderful.
Yeah.
But if you want that trajectory, that economic trajectory, it's all about how do you transition from sort of phase 1 of your career to phase 2, and do you invest in yourself? Like, how
Yeah.
wealthy do you realistically want to be or need to be? Because those are different paths,
Right.
right? You can be intentional about this stuff. Like if you're working for a salary, then you have to look at your company and see, okay, where does the salary path take me? Maybe it caps out at 100 or 120 or 150, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Or is it, do I have an idea for a business? Can I start a business? It's riskier. Do I have the safety net that if I fail, I can try again? Right? These are all sort of decisions that you have to make. But I think everybody wants the overnight. How do I get from barely being able to pay my bills to being in a mansion? And the answer is, struggling is kind of, I mean, again, these are hard things to just deal with.
Yeah.
Struggling is a normal part of being 24 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, I was 24 years old and I struggled when I was 24 years old.
Especially when you get married, because it's like, oh my goodness, I'm learning how to be married. I'm learning how to build a career. I have a business myself, so.
Okay. Yes, it is hard to be like run a business. That is difficult. I will also say that most people in the United States don't have a business, and the vast majority of available jobs are part-time minimum wage positions. And none of this advice is useful for people who are working those jobs.
Yes.
Oh, I'm building a business. My husband has a business. So we're both just like taking risks constantly.
Right, exactly. Like being young means being uncomfortable. That's also why you can afford to take some more risks, is because when it's just the two of you and you don't have kids yet, then you can take more career risks that you wouldn't be able to take if you already had a bunch of mouths to feed, for example.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest thing to take away is, good, sound financial decision making. Take a look at your bills, take a look at your earnings. See how you can get from point A to point B. Try to have a plan to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And just recognize that this is normal. It's totally normal. There's nothing unnatural about feeling financially uneasy when you're young.
Right.
There's nothing sort of terrible about you. It doesn't mean that the system is... There's never been a system in human history where 24-year-olds felt economically comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we could maybe make one. Like, I don't know. I think Medicare for all would probably help. I'm not an expert or anything, but I feel like having healthcare covered and knowing that you aren't going to go into medical debt, or knowing that you aren't going to put yourself into debt to cover a loved one's medical expenses, that would probably help, actually.
And there is no system where that exists. And you can say people in Norway feel more economically comfortable because they have all of these financial safety nets.
I have lots of friends. They do not.
I mean,
they can't get a house.
Correct. No, that's right. The home ownership in these places. You want to talk about home ownership inability? Home ownership in Europe is almost a non-existent thing.
You rent
never
an
get a
apartment
house.
for the rest of your life.
Correct.
Yeah.
So like the idea that like the American dream is somehow equivalent to the Norwegian dream is just not true.
Right. It's different perspectives, different ideas. I think as well it's very encouraging to hear from someone, especially at your stage of life and like how successful you've been able to be, that it takes time. I know there's a little bit of hate from my generation, just a little. I think...
Also, just as an FYI, like, home ownership is pretty common in a lot of the countries in the EU. Like, it's not an uncommon thing. In fact, I just had a cursory look. It looks like Norway, the Netherlands, and Sweden have some of the strongest mortgage markets in Europe because people buy a lot of homes there. Like, yeah, there are high rates of rental, but there's also high rates of rental here in the United States. Yeah, I mean, U.S. home ownership in the United States is around 65%. That's roughly equivalent to the country he's trying to, like, say doesn't have a rate of ownership. Like, he's just straight up not correct.
One thing that my generation has been lied to about specifically, especially because our quality of life has gone up so much, is just that,
it's instantaneous.
It's instantaneous.
Yes. I mean, again, people get tired of hearing people my age talk about it. The prevails when you're young. It sounds like your parents walking both ways uphill to school. But the reality is that, like, I remember when my wife and I were first married, and like a great day was I would have a speech at like a local Republican club 30 miles away. We drive there in our shitty 1986 Honda Civic. That was literally our first car. And we would drive out there, and I'd have like a couple of books in the back that my publisher had given me for free. I'd be like, I have 30 books, and I'd sell them at $15 a pop.
Yeah.
And if I walked away with a couple $100 by selling like 15 or 20 copies of the book,
that
was like a great day. That was like an amazing day. And I did that for years. Okay, like, and everybody does that for years.
Oh yeah.
Everybody does.
Yeah, totally wasn't, getting any kind of billionaire backing from the Republican Party or major mega donors. No, sir. Couldn't remember who initially invested in Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro received his initial investment back in 2015 to the tune of $4.7 million from Ferris Wilks, who's a natural gas executive.
Does that for you?
We're always selling stuff on Facebook Marketplace. Like, we just moved into a new house, which is totally a God thing because we're going to get to own our first house.
That's amazing.
Crazy.
That's awesome.
Literally cannot believe it. But
I'm sorry, at the age of 24, you're buying a house. I'm sorry, if you're buying a house at 24, you are not actually worried about egg prices. Shut the fuck up. Like, oh, our grocery bill is so high. You're buying a house at 24.
we moved into a house and we were like selling all our furniture because we were like, okay, we want to get new furniture, so we have to sell it and then get the new things on Facebook
100%.
Marketplace. It's life. And I think with the social media age, especially watching all these like influencers and people online just have this overnight success all the time.
And it's fake. It's not real.
It's not.
It's totally not real.
It's not. I've been there. I was an influencer for a few years. All of it's
Really? Who were you? Because you haven't been introduced as one at all. Seems like it might have been relevant at the top of the show.
fake. It's all monopoly, and then it goes away in an instant, you know?
Yep.
So, I mean, I made the choice to get married young. And so
I mean, I guess being an influencer could all be fake if you don't actually believe in the things you're saying. I would still be saying these things if I didn't have a platform. And you know that because I've been saying the same things the entire goddamn time.
when you get
It's a
married
good
young,
choice. Good for you.
It was great. I love it. But we didn't have anything.
Yeah.
Like, we were like, oh, like my husband, you know.
You know who she is? Can you just tell me if she, like, is she a known conservative influencer? Because, like, I just want to understand where she's coming from to wind up on this show.
Was a missionary
Mhm.
kid. So it's like, he had that, you know. I had student debt. So I was
Yeah.
like, what are we doing? But it's nice to hear that, like, it takes effort and it takes work. And you will come out in the end okay and, you know,
Your
have
parents
lots
did.
of kids.
Your
it's gonna work
grandparents
out.
did.
Yeah.
Most people on Earth today kind of do. I mean,
Yeah.
at least certainly in the West they do. It will be okay is the first thing to recognize. And it'll be especially okay if you just make good decisions. There's a natural progression to life. And
True,
you'll
Eddie.
be living in 15 years in a bigger house than you currently live.
There's a natural progression to life. No, there's fucking not. No. There's not. Sometimes things happen that throw off all of your plans. Sometimes you fall in love. Sometimes you get hit by a bus. Sometimes someone you love gets cancer and you need to drop everything to take care of them. Like, things happen. There's not like a natural trajectory that locks you in to doing better in 20 years than you are right now. That's one of the scary things about our system. It presents you with this illusion of progress, but like that can go away in a heartbeat. In some cases, literally. Yeah, sometimes the woke mab transes you, indeed.
Live in if you just
Yeah.
don't make. I'm trying to remember who said this.
Well, I know her name is Madison. I don't. Okay.
I wish I could remember who said it, but it's a wise line. The first path to getting rich is not getting poor.
Like I'm sorry. You know, like I know I tell you guys like you treat yourself like and dedicate yourself to self-improvement because it's just an inherently good thing to do, to try and be a better version of the self you were just, yesterday. But that doesn't mean you're going to power scale like a shonen anime protagonist. Okay? You're not guaranteed that kind of a life path. I'm sorry.
Ooh, that sounds like a Dave Ramsey quote.
Yeah, it does sound like
Wait, I'm sorry.
I can remember who said it, but it's a wise line. The first path to getting rich is not getting poor.
I can't believe he just unironically said tip number 1, don't be poor. I'm honestly shocked. Like, yeah, having money makes it easier to make money, but the entire purpose of you giving this advice is to people who don't have money. It's why, like, you're having a discussion with someone about the economy. Telling poor people to just not be poor isn't a fucking thing that doesn't help, actually.
Ooh, that sounds like a Dave Ramsey quote.
Yeah, it does sound like
that
Dave
sounds
Ramsey,
like
but
something
that
Dave
really
would
is
say.
it. It's like to avoid the worst decision, and that's like half the battle. That's more on the.
Do you think we Do you think now we have no solutions? It's your fault that you're poor, so suck it up and work harder. We'll capture the hearts and minds of voters in 2026. I'm worried. It's a very compelling message. I mean, the entire purpose of them doing this is to like assuage Gen Z specifically on the topic of affordability. But if you're just telling like a bunch of people who are entering the workforce or have just been in the workforce for a little while that like, okay, tip one, don't be poor, that that is not helpful, to say the least.
In a moment. First, you think a fresh start means things will be different, but it's the same system. The banks keep winning. Sometimes you're stuck paying the price.
Is this a gold commercial?
Every month, it just gets worse. Here's the thing. You don't have to keep playing that game. PDS debt has already helped.
It's not. I'm disappointed.
Okay.
Right. Everything sounds really good on the surface, right? Okay, fine. I'm just going to throw a check at you. Oh, my life is better because I have a check now. Okay, that may be true for you in the moment, and I'm not going to deny that if I got a $2,000 check today, or $5,000, or $100,000.
Yeah, like Ben, let's not be crazy. If you got a $2,000 check today, that would not be an odd day for you. I will say that the studies we've seen preliminarily, like on people getting money, have been very positive. You know what? Just as a little example here from my own city here. Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, 1 year of basic income in Minneapolis. Experimental findings show how a stable source of income helps households. This is from January 18th of 2024. Take a look. Minneapolis Fed researchers used a randomized control trial to study the city of Minneapolis's guaranteed basic income pilot program. After 1 year basic income payments of $500 per month, the low-income Minneapolitans, I've lived here my entire life and never heard that, but okay. Improve financial stability, food security, and psychological wellness. Wow, that's crazy. Sounds like it's doing the thing it's intended to do. GBI payments have mixed effects on housing stability and no negative effects on labor supply, i.e. people kept working. Cool. Food security, financial security, well-being, and psychological wellness all improved for GBI recipients relative to the comparison group of non-recipients as of the 12-month mark. Additionally, we find some evidence of a positive impact on housing stability. For the remaining index, labor supply, we cannot detect a significant impact of GBI. Note that these changes in average outcomes do not necessarily correspond to the formal effects that we estimate using methods intended to adjust for survey non-response. Also, just going to point out here, like, yeah, $500 a month is not going to guarantee you housing. You know? It's obviously going to make it a lot easier to maintain your housing, though, which is what the study found. So, cool. Hopefully Minneapolis gets its shit together and implements that on a larger scale.
Check today, I'd feel better about my life than if I didn't get a $100,000 check. But that's not how you make public policy, because if you give everybody a $100,000 check, inflation will obviously be rampant.
And then the
you'll get higher prices,
$100,000
and the $100,000 goes away, and everybody
Yeah.
else's savings are degraded. It's very easy to make a political argument where you say, I'm going to just drop a benefit on your head. It's the free ice cream argument from third grade, right? You have some kid who's running for class president. He says, free ice cream for everybody. There's no real way for that to be fulfilled in a way that actually is useful to kids. There are downside effects of all of that. So when you look at the policies, the long-term policy ramifications of these sorts of policies, you actually...
Except there's a big difference between giving people free ice cream and giving people, you know, a currency that can be exchanged for goods and services in a wide variety of directions based on their individual needs. I feel like that should be pretty obvious, I guess.
You do have to look.
Are there third grade class presidents? I don't think so.
At what is going to happen, not the moment you get the check, but what's going to happen over the course of the next 6 months.
Yeah, like, I don't know. Maybe some people can exchange ice cream for, like, rent, but I don't think most people can. I don't think your landlord would be satisfied with a couple tubs of Ben & Jerry's.
Course of the next year. And so many of the policies that Zohar Mamdani in New York wants to try were tried in the 1970s and were disastrous. I mean, wrecked the city.
Yeah.
So, for example, he wants to do a bunch of rent freezes and rent control. They tried this in the 1970s. And you can go back and you can watch on tape the 1977 World Series, which was played in the Bronx because the Yankees were in the World Series. And there's a very, very famous video of Howard Cosell, who is commentating the Yankees game. They pull out, there's a helicopter shot of Yankee Stadium, and there's fires everywhere. And so he says the Bronx is burning. Why was the Bronx burning? Because apartment owners were burning down their own apartment complexes for the insurance money because the rent.
Yeah, but throw those people in jail, though. Like if the slumlords are burning their buildings down, put them in prison, seize their property. Like I don't know, if someone's gonna burn down their apartment building, then the city should just seize that apartment building and arrest the man who's tried to burn it down. That seems like, yeah, no-brainer to me.
Control had made it
my
less lucrative for
gosh.
them to.
I can't believe in this particular situation, an example that Ben is giving, the main problem he has with it is rent control made the buildings too cheap. His problem with it isn't the rampant arson.
Continue to operate the apartments
Yeah.
than to watch them burn down and take the insurance
Oh
money.
yeah, and the price of operation goes up
Yes.
over time. So if it's stuck there,
Correct. All these things have unintended consequences.
Yeah, no, those apartment owners were totally justified in burning down those apartment complexes. Like, yeah, Ben. I wasn't expecting anarchist Ben over here being the first one with the Molotov.
Everybody wants like an immediate solve. There's a sugar high, I'm sure, for people who receive this in the immediate term. But if you want to make New York more livable over anything like the mid to long term.
I mean, if your argument is that prices that make it, I'm sorry, if your argument is essentially that, well, you need to make apartments unaffordable for people in New York City, because if they become too cheap, landlords will simply burn them down. I feel like that's an argument against landlords rather than against rent control. But, what do I know? I'm a simple country streamer.
You actually have to change seriously the underlying policies
Right.
that prevent people from building extra supply, rather than stimulating demand with subsidies and also restricting supply with regulations.
when you're talking about handing people a check doesn't really help. It makes me think about in COVID when they started handing out all these stimulus checks.
And for a moment, it felt great. For a moment, it was like, oh, cool, I can buy a bunch of new stuff. And then it turns out you go on Amazon, and everything costs 5 times what it once did, right? A Thanksgiving dinner is now $1,000, where a Thanksgiving dinner was $300 like 5 years ago. There's a great chart showing the price of goods in the United States over time. And what it shows is every single good that government has subsidized, the price goes up. Every single good that government does not subsidize, the price goes down. And when the government subsidizes the demand for a particular product, let's say college education, colleges just adjust the price to go up with the increased demand.
Got it.
Right. Meanwhile,
You're right, which is why we should just make it free. We should just make state university free, right? All public universities free. No reason to not use that.
if the government stays out of it, then the prices tend to find their own level. Right? TVs have gotten better and cheaper.
Yeah.
Because TV companies look at you, they look at me and say, oh, those people want cheap TVs. Great. And if I can make a better TV, then I will be able to make more money.
That makes sense. So when the government steps in and gives money to people to like go to college, as it would be, then they raise the prices just because, oh, well, look, these people are going to college, the government's giving you money, we'll just charge more money now because
Right.
we can.
Exactly. And
It's almost like leaving this to the whims of the market is a bad idea. If only there was some kind of alternative, like making it free.
and not just because we can, but
wild.
also because unless they're about to hire a bunch of new professors,
Yeah.
then they still have a limited number of slots at the
Mm-hmm.
college or university. When I was at Harvard Law, for example, there were like 500 people per class. I think there's still about 500 people per class. They've not actually radically increased the number of enrollees at Harvard Law School. And so what does that mean? If you have 10,000 applicants as opposed to 2,000 applicants, well, now I know that I have a big pool of people who really want that, and so the price is going to go up.
Yeah, and I think in the conversation of education as well, when all these subsidies are happening, it doesn't really push people to look for the cheaper options.
Right, or even the best option.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's happened in the public markets with regard to student loans, for example, is let's say that there were no let's say there were no FISA loans, the government wasn't involved at all. Okay, so you get out of school at 18, you decide, I'm going to go to college. So you look around and you say, I really want to go to, University of Iowa, and I want to major in art history. So now you have to go to a bank. And the bank is going to look at you and say, why would we possibly loan you without any collateral money to major in art history? There's no way you're not going to make that money back.
Yeah.
And so the art history major at University of Iowa is going to have a real tough time, unless there's a donor subsidizing it, getting anybody to come. Instead, if you say, I want to go to University of Iowa and I want to major in geoengineering, and you go to a bank, and the bank says, okay, well, it looks like the trajectory for your income path is pretty good. So I will give you a decent educational loan because I think there's a good shot you're going to get paid back. So this is what happens, for example, when I went to Harvard Law, the impression that banks, I wouldn't need a publicly subsidized loan to go to Harvard Law. The salary coming out my first year when I was coming out was $180,000. And so they knew that if they lent me, $100,000 a year to go to Harvard, that over the course of the next 10 years, there was a very high likelihood that I was going to pay off my loan.
Yeah.
So the private markets are very good at.
Remember earlier in this conversation when he was like, yeah, and if I went to like a speaking engagement and I sold a couple $100 of books, that was a good day in my beat up 1996 Civic. And now he's talking about how like he graduated from Harvard with like he did. They knew I'd be making six figures, $180,000 a year. It kind of sounds like you were full of bullshit earlier in the conversation, then, doesn't it? And also, the argument being put forward here about like, well, businesses will subsidize what is profitable, but also there are things that are indirectly profitable, right? Things that are indirectly profitable that enable other things that are profitable directly, right? Like a good example of this, roads are indirectly profitable because they allow for commerce to take place. They allow for people to get to their jobs. They allow for, like the basic building blocks of an economy to exist, right? So the state pays for that. But also, one of the things that allows for society to exist is art and understanding art and like building up new forms of art and culture and all of that. It is bundled together, and you need that, especially because if you go into like other parts of the world, other parts of our culture, like Hollywood or I don't know, Nashville, I guess, like if you're into country music, like having an understanding and a grasp of the history of the arts is actually super important and helps inform and build new and exciting takes on older things, which in turn spurs demand and then people buy the new exciting thing, right? Like innovating new camera techniques for a hit film can be life-changing. Not just for you, but for the people who view that film. It can be we're talking like things that really matter in our society. The stories that latch on to us, that inform us, that push us, etc. Like those are made possible because people gave a damn about art. And that those people that gave a damn about art, they might not be the first kinds of people that a private bank is going to want to support. But maybe it would be good if we made college free for folks. Because maybe some of those indirectly profitable things might be useful to have in our society. Like roads.
Determining their risk. And that's particularly true in education. In education, bizarrely, the only area where there's no collateral, right? They can't seize your degree. If you don't pay, they can't take your degree back. What are they going to do with it? So the question is, why would they loan to you? And the only answer is because they believe you're going to earn out and then you're going to pay back your education. But the government doesn't care. The government.
Well, one, no, they don't. They don't care if you pay out or not. This is one thing that like Ben is just misrepresenting this like crazy. These companies that are putting out the loans, they do not care if you pay it back in full ever. Because they will keep on charging you month after month. They'll start garnishing your wages. They'll start nickel and diming you. Specifically because that's where they make their money. That's how someone can pay their student loan for 20 years and have a bigger outstanding debt to the bank than when they initially took out the loan, even though they were paying it off over the course of 20 years. That's how these people in these businesses make money. It's automatic. In some cases, it can be Elizabeth. And also, in some cases, well, in as far as I know, for most student loans, you can't get rid of them by just declaring bankruptcy. They follow you forever. Yeah, like it is literally better for these companies if you never fully pay it off, because they can just keep charging you month after month. Because these companies make money off of the interest for student loans.
Has an interest in making you feel better by going to college. Governmental actors took the wrong lesson from the 60s and 70s. So in the 60s and 70s, a major income gap began to emerge between college grads and people who are high school grads.
Yeah.
And the reason...
Well, obviously.
Of course, just as there would be a major income...
Man, they just brought this lady on to glaze Ben Shapiro, and it's genuinely not working in the slightest.
Differential between people who graduate high school and people who don't graduate high school.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Like this is not... So what the government said is, well, the way to solve this is by getting more people to go to college. Okay, well, actually, all that did was it created a striation in college grads. Right now, there's a new striation, which is if you go to grad school, better income trajectory.
Wow.
Than just college.
That was always the case. The more educated you are, the more specialized and more difficult to replicate you are, so you get paid more. Generally, that's how that works. Generally.
And there's a huge striation in majors. So if you're an ed major at Harvard, you're going to earn way less than you would as a STEM major at Harvard. Of course.
I've never thought of it that way, so this is...
Yeah, and maybe that's kind of fucked up. Maybe like people who like major in education should be able to make decent wages, you know? Should be able to make a decent amount of money in our society. Maybe that's kind of fucked up, and maybe we should fix that.
Very much blowing my mind is that the government giving subsidies potentially ruined college education, in the sense that, you know, people used to go to college to actually pursue things that...
Yeah, man. It's not like, you know, back in the 70s and 80s, the people definitely didn't go to college just to party. You're so right. They definitely didn't go to college just because they were expected to. Uh-huh.
Would provide a career or a better future for them. Like, I'm going to go to law school, you know, I'm going to become an engineer. And now we have all of these random majors. Like, I'm going to major in philosophy of kneecaps, like something stupid.
No, that's right. And not only that.
Yeah. It's not like there's anything serious to be learned at a major I'm not familiar with. If I don't know what it means, it must be a stupid fool's errand.
It also screwed up the employment market. So, for example, you want to work as a...
Also, again, their inherent argument here is just poor people going to college ruined college. Everyone being able to go and get a higher education ruined college. Like, they're just like, we need to scale it back down so only aristocrats could go to college again. What an insane argument.
Barista at Starbucks. Why do you need a college degree to work as a barista at Starbucks? You shouldn't have to, right? Or as a...
You don't need a college degree to work as a barista at Starbucks. It's just that there are a lot of Starbucks around college universities. So the people who get those jobs tend to be people with degrees. Ben?
Hairdresser or whatever. Like, there are a million jobs in America, millions and millions of jobs that should not require a college degree. The problem is, if everybody goes to college, then it turns into graduating from high school.
Yes.
Right? It's just like the next level. And so if you didn't go to college, there's now something wrong with you. And then to make things even worse, basically what college degrees have become is an effective IQ test. So we look at the degree that's on your diploma, and we look at the degree that's on your resume, rather. And
I mean, honestly, I think that says more about you than it does about colleges. That's your interpretation of people with college degrees. It's not everyone's interpretation of people with college degrees. I'm sorry, if you equate a college degree with IQ, number one, you shouldn't be using IQ. It's eugenics bullshit. But, like, people with degrees aren't necessarily more intelligent than people who don't have degrees. But what it does represent is time. It represents that you put in time to gain specialization in a given field. That's not a measure of your intelligence. That's a measure of your expertise in a given field. You understand how there's the difference there?
And we say, okay, you went to Harvard, that means you're smart. You went to, JUCO, that means you're not as smart. And so we'll give you an advantage if you went to Harvard as opposed to you went to JUCO. Well, why do we make the guy who's going to JUCO pay $200,000 in order to compete with the guy from Harvard? What would have been better is if we actually didn't have that system at all, and employers hired without regard to college degrees. So you're seeing people now like Peter Thiel or like Alex Karp or like we do at this company actually try to look at the underlying performance in either prior jobs or apprenticeships instead of just looking at the college degree as sort of the be-all, end-all.
Yeah, because everyone knows if you apply to a job with a college degree, you're guaranteed to get that job.
Heuristic shortcut.
Yeah, I really appreciated that when I applied to this company because I ended up...
Oh, so she literally does work for the Daily Wire. So really, this video should be titled, Ben Shapiro interviews newly hired Gen Z intern about the economy. We told you. I was just saying, I don't know where she came from, and you guys were like, maybe she is. I wanted confirmation, damn it, and we got it.
Dropping out of college because
two of our three founders did not finish college.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm the only one with a higher education, really.
Well, you're the smartest, obviously. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Caleb, don't take it that way. But yeah.
Okay, so I want to better understand what happened with the housing crisis and how we got to a point where houses are as expensive as they are.
What we're getting right now is the impact of a few things. One, massive inflation of the currency. So that is, putting a lot of money in people's pockets, like just cash money in people's pockets. That's what happened during the Biden administration. Mm-hmm. And so they're taking that money and they're saying, where do I put that? So you're seeing it go to the top end of the stock market, right? NVIDIA and the rest. But you're also seeing it go into real estate. People taking that money and saying, I want to buy a house. Okay. Simultaneously.
Okay. But also, people aren't... I'm sorry. I need to back up.
We're also seeing that money in people's pockets. So that right now is the impact of a few things. One, massive inflation of the currency. So that is, putting a lot of money in people's pockets, like just cash.
Inflation isn't putting a lot of money in people's pockets. Inflation doesn't give you extra money. It just devalues the money you have. It means you have less wealth. Your money is worth less.
Money in people's pockets. That's what happened during the Biden administration.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're taking that money and they're saying, where do I put that? So you're seeing it go to the top end of the stock market, right? NVIDIA and the rest. But you're also seeing it go into real estate. People taking that money and saying, I want to buy a house. Okay. Simultaneously, because the inflation was so high, because people had all this money in their pocket, the government is trying to bring the inflation down. And so the Federal Reserve increased the interest rates. Okay. That is a way of making it harder to borrow money.
Yes.
Because they don't want people to borrow more. If you can borrow more money, you continue to have this inflationary price spiral. So what does that mean for people who own houses? If you wanted to increase the supply of houses, then you need to do one of two things. Either get people who own houses to sell them.
Yep.
And move into a different place. Or you need people to build houses. Again, there's a delay effect on the building of the houses.
Yep.
You'd have to relieve the regulations. They haven't really done that. So what you end up with is a bunch of people who are older who are not moving out of their houses. This was a big problem.
You could also, I don't know, make it illegal to speculate on, like, using housing and to speculate. I'm just spitballing here. You could have vacancy taxes to tax vacant properties. It seems like there are a whole lot of additional things one could do actually to increase housing circulation beyond just, build new houses.
Yeah.
Is that you would have high prices. It was sort of a bizarre, sticky real estate situation in places like Florida. You would have people who are 80, who don't need a 5-bedroom house.
Right.
But they don't want to sell their 5-bedroom house. Why? Because if they sell their 5-bedroom house, which they have a 30-year mortgage on at 2%, they now have to get a new mortgage, and their new mortgage is at 7%.
Yeah, which is a lot
right? And
worse.
so they don't want to sell. So they just stick in that house, and they stay there, and then that's not new inventory on the market, so the price doesn't come back down.
Well, again, you were just talking about people putting more money into the housing market. They're putting money into the housing market as a speculative asset. That's what they're doing when they put money into the housing market. You aren't putting money into the housing market by with your own house. Like that's I feel like I shouldn't have to describe this. I feel like I'm kind of on crazy pills because like this feels like such a childish argument for him to make. I'm honestly a bit agog.
That
So
makes
so the housing
sense.
market's been very sticky.
Yeah, I noticed as well in 2020, it felt like so many people were buying homes just because the interest rates were so low and it was so affordable. Did that cause a lot of the issues as well?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you have a lot of people who have the money in their pocket, your demand has gone up.
Yeah.
Right? So if the supply doesn't go up to meet it, then you have a problem. So one of the things that happened is that because of the worldwide shutdowns from COVID, for example, all the materials coming into the United States came in slower, right? We had these gigantic bottlenecks. It became very expensive to build, right? The tariffs are making it more expensive to build right now. If you talk to contractors, they're having a tough time getting the materials that they need at an affordable price. So the price of building has gone up. And so you have all of these things kind of meeting in the middle and making it very, very difficult to buy houses. And that's particularly true in places that are already very pressured in terms of space.
Yeah.
Right? So that's really true in big cities and their surrounding suburbs.
Yeah, and again, this is where a vacancy tax would be extraordinarily helpful because a lot of folks who own and rent out or sell condos or whatever, like they're doing it to try and make money. And what they do when they have vacant property is that they write it, they use it as a tax write-off so that they pay less in taxes. And if you instead add a cost to keeping these places vacant, a lot of them will turn over those properties a lot quicker.
Again, this is why I got myself into some trouble by making the, I think, eminently obvious suggestion that if you can't afford to live in New York, I'm not talking about should we shift policies in New York? Of course we should. I'm talking about you as a 24-year-old. You should pursue the best opportunities available to you.
Right.
If that opportunity
Yeah. Hey, are you entering the workforce in New York? Are you working minimum wage? Are you flipping burgers in New York City? Well, go fuck yourself. You can't live in New York City anymore. Go 5-hour commutes for you, bucko.
is not available in New York, just a piece of life advice, then you should really look to move to Nashville or Florida or someplace,
Right.
or Austin, someplace where you have a better opportunity to do that particular thing. And that's always been a home.
I may have missed it. Did he mention banks getting bailed out for the housing crisis, bailed out by our tax dollars? No, of course not.
Hallmark of economics is the fluidity of, for example, labor. You lose your job, you don't sit around saying, I want my old job back at the same exact factory.
Right.
You try and find a new job at a different place. If you can't afford to buy a home in one particular place, typically what we would do in the United States is we'd try to find a better place to live.
Right.
And so you'd get population movement. Fewer Americans are moving now. And because fewer Americans are moving, that means that
Yeah, because people don't generally want to move from the place they put down roots in.
again, there's a lot of stickiness in the markets in places like New York or Los Angeles or Seattle.
So you mentioned a little bit ago that the tariffs are causing a lot of bottlenecks in the buildings. So did that start during Trump's presidency at the start of that, all the policies he was putting in place?
No, it's exacerbated a little bit in things like lumber, but it really started during COVID. So during COVID, because the global markets basically shut down and because all the ports were closed and it created these massive supply chain bottlenecks all over the world, that meant
Yeah, and the tariffs are also just killing our importation ability. So the tariffs are making all of the pre-existing issues worse. Yes.
that materials just were not available to build. And then it took a long time for global shipping to restart. And there were empty ships that were arriving on shores because the ships keep going whether or not they're loaded up. And so you ended up with this huge supply chain bottleneck, which did in fact contribute to the Biden inflation. It wasn't just that Biden had bad economic and fiscal policy, which he did. It is true that COVID did create massive supply chain bottlenecks that led to inflation. Because again, if you have bottlenecks in supply, less supply, same demand, higher price.
So how long approximately do you think it would take in order for the demand to actually reach the place that it needs to be to lower housing prices?
So demand has to go down or supply has to go up?
Yeah, I mean supply. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm mixing up words.
How long? Right. So how long would it take for supply to go up?
Yes.
It depends on where you are. So again, in New York City, the answer is it's going to take a while, right? You can't really build out. There's no place to build out. So you have to build up. It's very expensive to build in New York City. The regulations there are really, really exorbitant. Even if you got rid of most of the really onerous regulations.
Yeah, New York City and building up on existing buildings. Definitely a place where you want to skimp on regulation. You know, who cares if they blow with the wind a little bit to the left or the right? Who cares? Only the poor who are going to live there anyway.
The taxation, the difficulty in building, it would still take, I would imagine you have to talk to a builder about it. I would take 3-4 years minimum before you start getting a real alleviation in the housing supply in a way that dramatically would lower the prices.
Right.
Anyway, in like in Austin where you can build it out, it's a lot easier, right? You can just get some developer. Like everybody's yelling at the developers right now. How dare the developers buy up housing in Austin? Well, the developers are buying up housing in Austin because what they're frequently doing is they're taking older houses, making them over, and then reselling them at a higher price to people who want the houses. And if that continues, then the developer moves on and does that to another neighborhood, and that's actually how you increase the housing supply.
Yeah.
Let's say that somebody's buying up a whole block of single-family homes that are each 900 square feet from when your grandparents were there, and they're flipping those all into 2,500 square foot or 3,000 square foot homes because they're on big plots of land, and now they're selling them to somebody who's upper middle class. Okay, well, that I would say that's a good thing because you will increase the housing supply. Why? Because those developers are now going to take that money, and they now know there are a bunch of people who wanted those houses, who weren't able to get those houses, and now they're going to go build new houses if they have any brains at all. And if they don't have any brains, what they'll do is they'll take that money, they'll put it in a bank, and that bank will then lend out the money to another developer to take out the money to go build those houses. If you want more supply, then the incentive of demand creates supply, right? So the reality that you know a number of people who are willing to buy those crappy houses, then somebody will build.
Except the issue is there's no incentive to build the crappy houses. This is again one of the ways in which Ben's analysis just fails. Because what is incentivized is to build luxury residences. Now, why would that be? Well, because you can build a bunch of luxury residences, whether apartment complexes or houses, and then the reason you would do this is because when you do that, you only need to sell one or two in order to break a profit, as opposed to needing to sell out all of the entry-level housing. And similarly, if you build a luxury apartment complex, you don't need to rent out all of the apartments, or even most of the apartments. You can rent out a small handful of apartments. And you know what? Less wear and tear on the stuff inside of the apartment complex. Less upkeep cost. Like, if you can make the same amount of money renting 5 apartments versus renting 25 apartments, that is a net benefit. All of the incentives here are built around catering to a luxury market because there's a small demographic that has the money to spend on that, but they're willing to spend on it. And it's a lot less work, a lot less maintenance costs. Like, the people building new housing have no incentive to build it for folks just entering the housing market.
Build the crappy houses, the basic assumption of classical economics. Now, the only reason that wouldn't happen is overregulation, right? Prevention of people from building those houses. But there is this sort of assumption that you want that house. Okay, well, there's no right in economics to that house, right?
Yeah.
There's no right in America to quote unquote that house. You know, this happens all the time. That there'll be bidding on empty land. Forget about the house. There's bidding on empty land.
Yeah.
Okay, forget that there's a house already there. You'd like the piece of empty land to build a 3-bedroom house that's going to be 1,400 square feet. I want that piece of empty land to build a 10,000 square foot house. I have more money. I'm going to buy that piece of land.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that mean that I deprived you of that piece of land, or does it mean that I was able to pay a higher price and that the person who received that payment for that empty piece of land, which maybe they bought, 100 years ago, they're not going to take that money and they're going to put that money in a bank. That bank knows that you still want to buy a piece of land to build that house. And so if you're a good credit risk, they will lend you that money to go out.
Why would you have good credit if you're poor and haven't, again, Ben isn't really thinking about this situation or deliberately thinking about it wrong. He might be doing that. But if a bank gets a bunch of money from like a couple that has had a piece of property for the last 100 years of the family sells it, and let's assume they're doing like lower middle class. They have $10 million from Ben Shapiro now. They put it in the bank. The bank is not then incentivized to lend that money out to someone who needs a first-time house. The bank is then incentivized to do what it has been doing, which is to prioritize giving out loans to the wealthiest creditors that come to them and say, fuck off to the not so wealthy ones. Like, it's not difficult to figure out.
And build that house. Free flow of capital is the way that more things happen.
So you would argue that capitalism is the best route because it will always increase the supply for people
To meet the demand, yes.
to meet the demand.
Correct, exactly. Because if you're a capitalist, then what you want to do is get your product to the market and take advantage of the fact that people want that product in return from you. You can talk about sort of a mixed economy, and then
But also, again, if you're a capitalist, your goal is to make the most money possible. And if you can make more money by catering to a wealthy clientele where you only need to sell a couple of one thing, as opposed to selling hundreds or thousands of another thing at a much lower cost, well, then guess what? It's going to make it a lot easier for you to sell to that smaller demographic, huh? A lot less costs. That's probably why all of the developers are doing that right now.
can talk about socialism proper. So socialism proper would be the government just seizes the entire housing supply and then redistributes it as it sees fit, and then decides the price of houses and essentially
that isn't socialism proper. I don't think that Ben knows what socialism is.
Builds ground up by forcing people at the point of gun to build. And what you end up with is terrible.
Again, genuinely don't think that Ben Shapiro knows what socialism is. Socialism isn't when, well, socialism is not, in fact, this quote.
Socialism is when the government does stuff.
No, like socialism is has specific meanings, right? It's not when the government shows up with a gun and forces you to build houses. Like that's not what socialism is. Again, to reiterate here, socialism is changing the predominant mode of production in an economy from one that is owned by the capitalist class to one that is owned by the working class. That's it. It has nothing to do with the government coming in and pointing guns and seizing your shit. It has everything to do with, hey, do your workers work in that factory? Or do a bunch of workers work in a factory? Well, guess what? They should have a say in how the proceeds of their labor get used. They should have a say in what their working conditions are. They should have a say in how their time is allocated. And you can do this in a myriad of different ways. You can do it in a flat, co-equal type of structure. You can also do it on a hierarchical structure. One created more via democracy than one via kind of a top-down imposition. But, and like you could also even structure one like a traditional company is structured now, except that the only people who vote and dictate what the company does are the people who work there. Like, you know, kind of a democracy of some kind. Socialism is merely the implementation of democracy within the economic sphere. That's it. And the idea here that socialism is when guys with guns show up and force you to build houses? Nah.
Workmanship, you end up with a completely unwieldy market. You end up with the ugliest housing available. I mean, go look at the Soviet Union, where people are living in the ugliest places. By dint of the government decides where you live, right? That's full communism. That's typically not what people are talking about.
And communism is a stateless, classless, moneyless society, so I don't think that's what Ben is talking about here. I just don't think he knows what he means by socialism or communism.
Today, when they say socialism, what they really mean is confiscating wealth from wealthy people and then subsidizing particular people in order to build quote-unquote affordable housing, right?
What you are describing right now is just taxation. Ben, you're just describing what taxation is and has always been throughout all the history of every government. I'm not gonna lie, he's really, really missed a step. Like he's not good at this anymore.
No, she's going to prosecute the president of the. Right, so what they're going to do is they're going to go to a developer and they're going to say, okay, in order for you to build X number of luxury units, we're also going to force you to build X number of affordable units. It does have unintended consequences. So, for example, why does the government need to do that? Right? The idea would be that you have to force somebody.
Ben got dumber. I wonder if Ben started using ChatGPT and this is the result.
Who is a luxury builder to build a certain number of affordable units. And the affordable units are going to be, I assume, rent controlled. It's going to have to be the government telling you what price you can rent at. And so it's basically a subsidy from the government to the developer. And you now have to pay the developer to do that. Okay, well, the government is filled with inefficiencies. The government is not good at determining prices. What would be better is to just let the developers build as many luxury units as they want. People who are in these sort of mid-range.
Oh, okay. Yeah, all right. No. See, the solution is to do what they were already doing in the first place. That was, of course, pricing entry-level buyers out of the market completely. Yeah, no, you don't understand. The solution is everyone who's too poor for a home, lives in slums, and only a select elite few get to buy homes. I see.
Well, then have
the solution is to fuck the poor. Yep, and that is Ben Shapiro's solution in a nutshell.
A better supply of luxury units. They can move from their mid-range apartments to the luxury apartments.
Yes.
Their apartments are now empty. The price of those goes down because you have a higher supply of the mid-range apartments. And then all the places that are, affordable housing, those people move up. Like, this is how housing has gotten better over time. So one of the things people miss.
No, housing has gotten better over time specifically because of regulations. It's literally why you are now able to live in a home without asbestos, or live in a home without lead paint, or live in a home without structural instabilities that would cause it to collapse on top of you. It's how you are literally able to live in a home that has fire safety standards so that you don't just burn to death inside because no one bothered to add an exit. Come on, man. Fuck you.
Yes, is they assume that the housing supply is totally static in terms of quality. Right? They assume, this is why you see these memes online. My grandpa used to live in...
No one assumes that housing quality is static. What are you talking about? No one is more aware that housing quality is not static more than people who are impoverished.
1950 on one salary working at the Ford factory, and grandma wasn't working, and they could afford a house. The house they could afford was shit. It was terrible.
No, it wasn't. And you know how I know that? There are literally huge swaths of neighborhoods built off of those 1950s houses here in Minnesota. Like, I can drive for 5 minutes and be in a neighborhood of those kind of cookie cutter houses. Are they super aesthetically pleasing on the outside? No. Are they good, safe places to live? Yes.
If you go back and, seriously, go back and look at a house built in 1950.
Oh, yeah. I lived in one of those houses
Yeah, they're
last
not good.
year.
They're not
terrible.
nice. I mean, they're really bad. They're like 950 square feet.
Yep.
They typically are not particularly well insulated. They don't have central air very often. Like, they're not houses that anybody wants to live in. So when they say...
Well, wait a minute. They don't have central air because most people didn't have air conditioning in the 1950s, number one. Number two, they're not super well insulated, depending on where you live. Some places really required the insulation, like Minnesota. And number three, they're small. That's why they were largely considered entry-level homes, right? People aren't demanding luxury entry-level homes. They're demanding just entry-level homes that they can live in. It doesn't have to be a palace. It just has to be a place where they can sleep and eat and maybe watch some TV sometimes.
I can't afford the same thing my parents could afford. That's not true. You can afford the exact same thing your grandparents could afford.
No, you can't. I'm sorry. I'm aware of how much those homes cost. The homes I'm talking about, the ones built in the 1950s, the 1940s. Guess what? They cost $600,000, $700,000. All right. So, two things. Number one, the first result that I got when looking up 1950s home St. Louis Park was this article, Rare Carefree Mid-Century Modern Home in St. Louis Park lists for $925,000. And I was like, well, okay, but this home isn't exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about what Ben is talking about, right? So I went over and looked at Zillow, and when you know it, here's one of the small homes he's talking about. You know, again, here in Minnesota, most of these homes have basements, right? So this is 1,800 square feet. It is $331,000. Most people can't afford that. Most people can't get a loan for $331,000 as a starter home. Like, people don't got that. How much did a house cost in 1950? The median home price in the US was around $7,354. Let's see. Inflation calculator in 1950 to 2025. So, if the price of homes merely was inflated by the rate of inflation cumulatively between 1950 and 2025, the cost would be $101,641 for the median home in the United States. The median home cost in the United States as of this year, around $415,000, so 4 times that. People are priced out of the market. It just straight up. Marie Gian Greco, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships. I very much appreciate that. Also, what did you link to me, Sake? What is this? You sent 2 things.
Oh, fellow members of the Roman Senate, hear me. Shall we continue to build palace after palace for the rich? Or shall we aspire to a more noble purpose and build decent housing for the poor? How does the Senate vote? Fuck the poor!
Good. Indeed. That is Ben Shapiro in a nutshell. What is this other thing?
So let's say, for the sake of argument, that all of the water levels around the world rise by let's say 5 feet over the next 100 years, say 10 feet by the next 100 years, and it puts all the low-lying areas on the coast underwater, right? Which, let's say all of that happens. You think that people aren't going to just sell their homes and move?
Yay!
Just one small problem. Sell their houses to who, Ben? Fucking Aquaman!
God. H-Bomber guy. Has he been, what's he been up to? He been making video essays? What's he doing? What's he doing these days? Hope he's alright. Seems like a nice chap. Alright, we are so close to being done with this.
You just wouldn't want to live there, right? It's like saying, back in the day, my grandparents, they could afford to live on a one salary in 1955. Okay, well, if you want the rotary telephone back and you wish to have a clunker that gets 10 miles to a gallon, and you don't want a microwave and you don't want an oven, you don't want any of the nice things that we typically enjoy.
Hey, I'm sorry, but microwaves and ovens, you could get cheap ones of those, just as an FYI. But the biggest costs to most people on an average daily basis, Ben, are not, microwaves and ovens. Like, that's not the usual thing that's breaking the bank.
21 months baby sinuous scrog dance sinuous spinuous Riverboat party mode.
Indeed, Hammock, thank you for the 21 months. Very much appreciated. Thank you for supporting the show.
Could do that. I mean, we could do that right now, but that actually is living more like...
Ben, how much money do you think you are going to save by buying a clunker that gets 10 miles to the gallon and not having a microwave or having an oven? How much do you think that is? You think that's going to allow you to live on one salary, Ben?
Like some places in
Spoiler, it won't.
like Central and Eastern Europe than it is like living typically in the United States.
This is finally clicking in my mind for the first time.
Is
how
it?
it works? Because my parents, they bought, their first home was $50,000 and it didn't have a dishwasher or heat or any of those things, and they were able to move into a better house over time. But even then, it took 10 years.
100%. So this is my parents' story too, right? So I
Yeah.
grew up in an 1,100 square foot house, something like that, in Burbank,
Yeah.
California. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, 6 people, right? And no like amazing amenities. It was fine. It was like a nice middle to lower middle class house in Burbank, California. It was a great place to grow up. But
Yeah.
what my first apartment that I got with my wife, our first condo was like 1,400 square feet. That was like our first one, right? So it's bigger than what my
Whoa.
parents had when they were,
Yeah, probably because you graduated from college, like you said earlier, making 6 figures. Remember how you just dropped? You said that. Really not super impressive that you're living in a big condo. Would you make $180,000 a year, Ben?
when they were getting married. It's bigger than what they had. And then we've been able to obviously work our way up to like a really, really nice house. But that's true for my parents also. So, when people talk about the wealth gap and they look at various groups, one thing that happens is people change their wealth status over time. One of the ways people have traditionally built up wealth in the United States is by going and buying a house in a particular
Yeah. Which kind of makes it a problem that new buyers are being priced out of the market. Doesn't it, Ben? If only you could solve this problem in this conversation, but seeing as you only have 2 minutes left here, I doubt you're going to do that.
area, holding it for a particular period of time, and then selling the house. I mean, that's been
Right.
one way that people have made money. That's buying and holding stock is another way that people have,
Yeah.
have made money. But yes, I mean the quality of life that your grandparents
I'm sorry, wait, what?
holding stock is another way that people have.
Yeah.
Buying and holding stock is technically another way that people have made money. Just, it's also a way that people have lost an awful lot of money.
have made money. But yes, I mean the quality of life that your grandparents had or your parents had is so much lower than kind of the normal quality of life that we all take for granted. Everyone's grandmother could go down to the local store and for a cent you could buy a candy bar.
Yeah.
Okay, does that mean that she was wealthier than we are? Well, no, she was living in 1920. So actually the stuff that she had availability to would be absolute poverty level, like below poverty level crap
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Right? Like every poor person in America has a cell phone. Okay, not one of our grandparents
Wow.
had a cell phone.
Right.
Right? Like it's a magical piece of machinery.
Some of
that-
them didn't even have landlines. 'Cause
correct.
They were expensive.
If you go back to like the early 1900s, a huge number of houses in the United States didn't have toilets. Right? They have
Yes.
outhouses. So,
Yeah.
so trying to compare by simply looking at kind of like dollar amounts, what you can buy with the dollar is the thing that's more important. There's an economist who I like to cite named Marion Tupy, and what he has developed is a measurement that I think is much better than just looking.
Also, just as an FYI, if someone in 1920 were to buy a candy bar for 1 cent, adjusted for inflation, that would make that candy bar 17 cents today. And I bring this up largely because the average candy bar price is now around $2 to $3 in the United States, and not, as many of you might note, 17 cents. Also, because of the poor quality of American ingredients that are allowed to be used in American candy, a lot of our candy can't be sold overseas in places like the EU that have higher safety standards for their candy and food. So, just as an FYI, Ben is just full of shit here.
Dollars. What he has developed is basically how much time would
Yeah, no, exactly. Gizmo, what Gizmo, what's it? Like, that's what's bothering me about Ben's entire argument here. He is essentially saying what you're saying. Forget you can't go to the doctor or pay rent. TVs are cheap. Well, sure, you might be like just wasting away from rampant tooth decay and pain, but yeah, and you can't afford to go to the dentist, but hey, you could afford you could afford to live in a place that has a dishwasher. Look at you, champ.
cost you in your life to purchase a particular unit of a good. If you go back to 1800, it would cost you multiple days of work to buy basically an hour of light, right? Because you had to buy a candle, right? And so the candle had to come from somewhere. Sometimes it came from whale oil. Sometimes it came from wax, right? Today, it costs you 0 time to buy an hour of light, right? You flip on your light, it's done. You literally can just do it for free. Okay, so that is why it's better to use sort of time value and what we have to invest. And that's why if you look at your life right now and you compare it to, like, how long would it have taken you to get, let's say, you order a table from Amazon. It takes 2 days to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're talking about technological innovation, Ben. Kind of like how that technological innovation made it cheaper to make and produce televisions. Like, that didn't... Damn it, man.
It took you one click of a button. And it cost you, whatever, $100. Okay, so how many hours would you have to work in order to earn $100 to pay for that table and to have it shipped and to put it together? And the answer is it's a lot cheaper now than it was even 30 years ago.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I feel like
it.
you covered everything, and I really understand kind of where economics are and why.
Well, wait a minute. Okay, just real quick. 1995. All right? So, in 1995, $100 in our today money would have been $48.23. Now, I'm just throwing this out there, but what was the minimum wage in 1995? $4.25 per hour. So, just going off of that, $4.25 per hour. If you worked for a little bit over, 12 hours, you would make enough to buy that $100 table. All right? What is minimum wage in 2025? Oh, it's $7.25 per hour. Okay, so you'd have to work 15 or 16 hours in order to afford a $100 table. So, just so we're clear, to buy the same table in 1995 compared to today, that would have cost you roughly 3 more hours of labor. Because we're being price gouged and wages aren't rising with costs.
The increase of demand and supply kind of affects the economy, and also why socialism doesn't work.
Thanks.
Which I never knew. So
wow, she just learned that socialism doesn't work, guys. She just learned that just now. She applied to the Daily Wire and didn't know what their stance on socialism was. Sure. Also, none of this conversation was about socialism. It was just a buzzword that got thrown in there.
Good times.
That, I gotta say, I am absolutely not surprised that this only has 46,000 views after being up for almost a week. That was terrible. What are the comments here? One contributor to increased prices is retail theft. I work in a dollar store. The shoplifting would stun you if you saw it. I'm pretty sure dollar stores price in a lot of loss, but all right. Bought my first house in my 20s, making under $30K a year in 2010 for $100K. Fuck you. That's crazy. I mean, good for them, I guess. I can't love this. More of it, please. Pure econ, less politics. I'm all for it. God, the fucking glazing. Here, at least there's one person. Apparently confronts means asks one question, then agrees with everything I say. Yeah, exactly. What a tense conversation between bitter rivals. The millionaire boss of the company and the newly hired intern. A team of equals yet opposites. I'm not gonna lie. I think after watching that, I have lost the will to live. I'm joking. But that was terrible. And I'm glad we're done. And we never have to address this again, other than to say, damn, Ben Shapiro losing a step. You know what it gave me? It gave me infomercial vibes. It was an infomercial for conservatism. Oh, it even had the comedic Bumbles. Oh God, you're right. Uncle Gumball, you're right. All right. All that being said, if you got anything out of this, please hit the like button and also consider dropping a comment. The comments really fucking help this in the algorithm these days. You guys can help make these videos a success. So please consider dropping those comments in the comment section. Let me know what you thought. And also, please consider joining your DSA. Make them more effective. Consider joining your local Dems. Make them more radical. And if you need a place to start, join our Discord. Reach out to Dragonfly for help joining your local Dems. Reach out to GamerG for help joining your local DSA. And folks, last but not least, please check out ImogeneOlivia.com. Gender euphoric lingerie designed from the ground up for trans femmes. We've tested it out with cis men, cis women, non-binary folk, everyone across the spectrum, anyone who wants to feel femme. Check it out. It is a non-tuck lingerie line, and we're going to be adding more pieces in the near future, new styles, new colors, all that jazz. Check it out. The holidays are coming up. Consider buying or letting folks in your life know, especially if they're trans femmes. And you need a link down in the doobly-doo. With all that being said, let's keep on going.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.